Um,
So we're going to read Gospel According with Spiritism, starting on chapter 21, number 11, Jeremiah and the False Prophets. Okay, go ahead, Elizabeth.
okay. Thus said the Lord of hosts, hearken not unto the words of the prophets that prophesy unto you. They make you vain. They speak a vision of their own heart and not out of the mouth of the Lord. They say, still unto them that despise me. The Lord hath said, ye shall have peace. And they say unto every one that walketh after the imagination of his own heart, no evil shall come upon you. For who hath stood in the counsel of the Lord and hath perceived and heard his word? Who hath marked his word and heard it? I have not sent these prophets, yet they ran. I have not spoken to them, yet they prophesied. I have heard what the prophets said, what that prophecy lies in my name, saying, I have dreamed, I have dreamed. How long shall this be in the heart of the prophets that prophecy lies? Yes, they are prophets of the deceit of their own heart. And when this people or the prophet or priest shall ask thee, saying, what is the burden of the Lord? Thou shalt then say unto them, what burden? I will even forsake you, said the Lord. Jeremiah 23, 16 through 18, 21, 25, 26, and 33. My friends, I wish to talk to you about this passage from the prophet Jeremiah. Speaking through his mouth, God said, it is the vision of their own hearts which makes them speak in this manner. These words clearly indicate that already in those times, the charlatans and the impassioned abused the gift of prophecy and exploited it. They consequently abused the simple and almost blind faith of the people by predicting for money both good and agreeable things. This kind of fraud was very widespread within the Jewish nation, and so it is easy to understand that the poor people, in their ignorance, had no possible means of distinguishing the good from the bad, as they were always more or less duped by the pseudo-prophets, who were nothing more than impostors and fanatics. There is nothing more significant than these words. I did not send these prophets, yet they run. I have not spoken to them, yet they prophesy. Further on, it says, I heard these prophets who prophesy lies in my name, saying, I have dreamed, I have dreamed. This is one of the ways they used to explain the confidences they were supposedly given. The masses, being credulous, did not think to dispute the truth of these dreams and visions. They thought it quite natural and frequently invited these prophets to speak. After the words of the prophet, listen to the wise counsel of the Apostle John when he said, do not believe in all the spirits. First test them to see if they come from God. This is because among those who are invisible there are also those who take pleasure in deluding, if they have the chance. The deluded ones are, as we can see, the mediums who do not take the necessary precautions. Beyond all doubt, it is unquestionably one of the greatest stumbling blocks against which many come to grief, especially when they are new to Spiritism. For them, it is a test which they will be able to accept themselves only by using much prudence. Therefore, before anything else, learn to distinguish the good from the bad spirits so that you, in your turn, may not become a false prophet. Lua is a protecting spirit, Karlsruhe, 1861. Karlsruhe.
Mm-hmm. Any questions or comments?
I guess I still I'm just, I don't know exactly how to tell. I guess you just feel into it, right? You said you just kind of feel how the difference between a good spirit or I is it more usually if you're kind of in a good spot that you would probably attract the good spirits?
Um, it's all about which kind of frequency we are vibrating. The like love is the how can I say, the parameter for the enlightened, the elevated vibration, right? So when we are vibrating in love, in compassion, and when we are close, feeling close to God and feeling close to our guides, then we are vibrating in a higher frequency. And
Mhm.
that's how they can protect us, because it's not that the bad spirits are invasive. They are they lie, they contradict themselves, they lead people to conflicts. If you see a spirit saying like, listen, oh look, that neighbor, they are gossiping about you, like they're, doing bad things for you, you know that this is not a very high level spirit, because high level spirits never gossip, never put you against anyone. Even if someone is doing bad to you, they are not going to say bad things about them. They are just going to say stuff that's going to help us to protect ourselves.
Mhm.
You understand the difference? So they always bring peace and harmony. They always bring comfort, and but when we are doing mediumship, we are not just talking with the guides and to the high level spirits. We're talking about people's relatives and even our own relatives, right? And even though they may not have been bad people necessarily, but they may not be so developed, spiritually speaking, because we are all in a process of development, right? And depending on which shape and what circumstances they passed away, sometimes people have passed away from an accident, a car accident, or an unexpected disease, or like some kind of situation where someone was guilty, was responsible for their death. Sometimes in those situations they feel confused, and sometimes they feel enraged, they feel like angry, because they have the same mentality as we have here. When someone hurt us, we feel angry, right? And if they are not so elevated, they are going to keep that grudge against whoever, or even against God, or against the life, because they feel that was not fair what happened to them. But we need to always take things into perspective and understand that, okay, even if it's our relative or somebody else's relative that we are channeling as spirits, doesn't mean that they know everything, doesn't mean that we need to really follow everything they say, because they know as much as their level of development allows them to know. So the more enlightened, the more elevated, the more developed the spirit is, the more they know. And the more they can, their judgment can be trusted. So we always need to keep this in mind. When we are dealing with our own relatives, or relatives of others, of course, there's a emotional connection, and we, have that sense of, uh, you know, everything they say, we are going to take with, open arms, and, trust them. but we need to take really carefully, because they may even have good intentions, and they may even have, come from a place of love. But if they are not so well developed, as most of us are not, they are not going to know everything. Even when they go to the spiritual world, they know more than we do. They have a more broader perspective of life, because they are not limited to our senses in a physical body, but still they don't know everything.
Mm-hmm.
So in terms of the really what they are talking about here, the false prophets, the really low level spirits and stuff, this is like, we can really see, like, it's not because they are always bad. It's like here, right? When you think about a sociopath, they lie a lot, right? They pretend to be good. They pretend to have good intentions and good agendas, but all they want is selfish fulfillment. They have a very selfish agenda, and they don't care about what other people feel and how many people are going to get hurt, as long as they achieve what they want. So they can deceive people, the same way that people here around us that are, not morally elevated, can deceive each other, right? Can you make the distinction when you like, in thinking about people around us, people that we have ever encountered in our lives? Can you make that distinction clearly? We can, right? Sometimes they can lie to us, they can deceive us for a while, but after some time we can start to realize, oh, wait a minute, that guy, they said this the other day, and now he's saying something different that's contradicting to what they said the other time. It's like, doesn't make sense. So we start to pay attention, and after a while, like over time, we realize, no, that person is not trustworthy. They are trying to lie to us. They are trying to deceive us. So it's the same thing with spirits.
Okay.
But one way or the other, we need to be cautious, but not afraid. Because if we are close to God, if we are close to our guides, that's the importance why we need to always meditate. We always need to pray, especially before a reading. Because then that's going to help us to be protected. And if there's something really, really harmful that spirits want to do against us, and we are not even prepared to understand, to handle, God doesn't allow that. Even if you are not, so well developed, but if you have good intentions, and if you're just innocent by not having enough experience, God does not allow that person to harm us so bad. As long as we need to be submissive and humble with God, towards God. And that's what helps us to be in a higher frequency and open to receive their help and protection. If we put ourselves like in a position of, oh, I know everything, I'm so experienced, I'm doing mediumship for a whole year, I know everything about mediumship. So that's when we become vulnerable, because we are never experienced enough in mediumship to ever do anything or know everything, that do not need the protection and the guidance from our guides and from God. Right? Does that make you feel a little better, Elizabeth?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else has questions or comments?
I'm just going to say that I think your dog is in agreement with what you said. It got a bit hectic at some point.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know what's happening today. He's playing in the backyard all day long. So I think that's why. It was too windy a couple of days ago, and he could not play outside, and now he's excited. So very good. So let's continue. Start chapter 22. Do not separate what God has joined.
Oh, okay, should I keep reading? The indissolubility of marriage. 1. The Pharisees also came unto him, tempting him, saying unto him, Is it lawful for a man to put away his wife for every cause? And he answered and said unto them, Have you not read that he which made them at the beginning made them male and female, and said, For this cause shall a man leave father and mother, and shall cleave to his wife, and they twain shall be one flesh. Wherefore they are no more twain, but one flesh. What therefore God hath joined together, let no man put asunder. They say unto him, Why does Moses then command to give a writing of divorcement and to put her away? He said unto them, Moses, because of the hardness of your heart, suffered you to put away your wives, but from the beginning it was not so. And I say unto you, whosoever shall put away his wife, except it be for fornication, and shall marry another, commit adultery. And whoso marrieth her, which is put away, doth commit adultery. Matthew 19:3-9. 2. The only things which are immutable are those which stem from God. Everything which is the work of man is subject to change. The laws of nature are the same at all times and in all countries. Human laws change according to the times, places, and intellectual progress. In marriage, what is of a divine order is the union of the sexes, so that the substitution of those who die may be put into effect. But the conditions which regulate this union are so human in design that in the whole world there are not, even in Christendom, 2 countries where these laws are exactly identical, and none where in the course of time they do not suffer changes. The result of this is that according to civil law, what is legitimate in one country at a certain time is considered to be adultery in another country and at another time. This is due to the fact that civil law has at its objective the regulation of the interests of families, interests which are vary according to customs and local necessities. In this manner, for example, in certain countries, a religious marriage is the only legitimate one. In others, it is also necessary to have a civil marriage. And finally, there are yet other places where civil marriage is sufficient on its own. 3, but in the union of the sexes, apart from the divine material law common to all living creatures, there is another divine law which is immutable, as are all of God's laws, one that is exclusively moral, which is the law of love. God wishes all beings to unite themselves not only through the ties of the flesh, but also through those of the soul, so that the mutual affection of the spouses be transmitted to the offspring, and that it should be 2 and not just one who love them, look after them, and help them progress. Is the law of love taken into consideration in ordinary conditions within marriage? Not in the least. The mutual sentiments of 2 beings who are attracted one to the other are not consulted, since in the majority of cases the sentiment is severed. What is looked for is not the satisfaction of the heart, but that of pride, vanity, and cupidity, in a word, all material interests. When everything goes well according to these interests, it is said to be a marriage of convenience. When the pockets are well lined, it is said that the spouses are equally harmonized and should be very happy. However, no civil laws nor the obligations which these laws determine can replace the law of love. If this does not preside over the union, it frequently happens that those who were forcibly united separate themselves. The oath sworn at the foot of the altar when pronounced as a banal formula then becomes a perjury. For that reason, we have unhappy marriages which end up becoming criminal, which is a doable disgrace that could have been avoided if, on establishing the conditions for that marriage, the law of love, which is the only law sanctioning the union in the eyes of God, had not been abstracted. When God said, "And they twain shall be one flesh," and when Jesus said, "What God hath joined, let no man put asunder," these words should he understood as a reference to the union according to God's immutable law and not according to the mutable laws of man. 4. Is the civil law then superfluous, and should we go back to matrimony according to nature? Certainly not. Civil law has the object of regulating social relationships and family interests in accordance with the requirements of civilization. Therefore, it is useful and necessary, although variable. It must be provident because civilized man must not live as a savage. However, there is nothing, absolutely nothing, which prevents it being an inference of God's law. All obstacles against the execution of this divine law stem from prejudices and not from the civil law. These prejudices, even if they are still alive, have lost much of their predominance among the enlightened peoples of this world. They will come to disappear with moral progress, which in fact will open the eyes of mankind to the countless evils, to the failings and even crimes which result from unions, which are contracted on the exclusive basis of material interests. One day man will ask if it is more humane, more charitable, more moral to chain one being to another when they are unable to live together than to restore their liberty, whether the prospect of an indissoluble prison will increase the number of irregular unions. Should I keep reading? Or
Yes, let's finish and then we can discuss.
divorce. Okay, divorce. Number 5. Divorce is the man-made law whose objective is to legally separate those who are in fact already separated. It is not against God's law, since it only reforms what men have done and is only applicable in cases in which divine law has not taken into account. If it was contrary to God's law, the church itself would be forced to consider as betrayers of a trust those of its heads who, by their own authority and in the name of religion, have imposed it on more than one occasion. In these cases, it would have been a doable betrayal of a trust because it only had worldly interests in view and not the satisfaction of the law of love. Even Jesus did not sanction the absolute indissolubility of marriage. Did he not say, "It was because of the hardness of your hearts that Moses permitted you to repudiate your women"? This signifies that ever since the time of Moses, when mutual affection is not the only motive for matrimony, separation could become necessary. Nevertheless, he added that in the beginning it was not like that, meaning that at the origin of humanity, when men were not yet perverted by selfishness and pride and lived according to God's laws, the unions were derived from sympathy and not ambition or vanity. Therefore, there was no desire to repudiate. Jesus goes even further because he specifies a case in which repudiation is justified, and that of adultery. Well, adultery cannot exist where there is sincere reciprocated affection. It is true that he prohibited a man to marry a repudiated woman, but here we must take into consideration the customs and character of men in those times when the Mosaic law prescribed stoning to death. When wishing to abolish one barbaric custom, it was necessary to find a substitute penalty, and he found it in the disgrace which would come from the prohibition of a second marriage. It was to a certain extent one civil law being substituted by another, but like all laws in this nature, it had to pass the test of time.
Any questions of people? It's a very sensitive subject. What do you guys think, and what do you guys understood from this chapter?
I feel like it's a bit of a chapter that is kind of being cautious in the way that it formulates things, in the sense that they do judge it a little bit, but they understand the factors that kind of might have put oneself in this position. So they definitely don't encourage it, but they also mentioned that, well, you know, if people really knew what they were getting into, maybe this wouldn't have happened. So maybe divorcing in the end is the only way. So yeah, I think that they do condemn a lot of things in this book, but this one, they do it in a very gentle way.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. What everybody else thinks.
I feel that a lot of, I'm just going to add up, I feel that a lot of religions in general do that, but it's also a bit hypocritical, because a lot of the times people who are to be married, families take a lot of energy into this account and don't really let the young couple get to know each other first. So that's a bummer within this civilization, within the well, in a progressive one like ours, it's not so bad, but for many centuries it was an issue.
Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of layers, right? Like they say here, the motives, right, for what people get married varies a lot, right? And the only motive should be love, right? It should be a consequence of a union based on affection and love between two human beings.
Mm-hmm.
And we know that in reality, is not the case, right, for everyone. So a lot of people get married for so many other reasons, for interest, right, because they are desperate, because they need the money, or whatever. There's a lot of motives, and I'm not here judging anyone. It's just what happens, like, and I see this in my office all the time, doing couples therapy, is that while that state continues, that necessity continues, the marriage continues. As soon as that necessity is satisfied, if the marriage is not based in love, the couple starts to have problems and conflicts, and they cannot stay together anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And even like before, because if it's not based in love, if you don't love someone, how we are going to accept their shortcomings, right? Living together, even as roommates, is a hell of a, you know,
Commitment.
is a, yes, a huge commitment. There's a lot of compromise that need to be done. There's you know, if you don't have maturity, is and depending on the personalities, it's just impossible. So, and if you don't have the sympathy, like they said, sympathy and love, because sympathy is the, you know, what we call people match. They kind of get along with each other. Their personalities are, you know, are somehow complementary or similar. It's easier for them to understand each other or to coexist, and to go through life through together. But if it doesn't have that, is really difficult. It becomes even impossible. So that's why in those cases is allowed, because of course if they are going to kill each other, or if they're going to get sick, or you know, can create a lot of complicated situations, both emotionally and physically, not only for them but for the children, then it's better to get divorced than persist. But the problem usually is in the beginning, when one or the other were not really sincere, or one or the other was not mature enough, one or the other didn't do their part in terms of loving the other, putting the other before them, and doing the whole thing that is necessary for a harmonious relationship to be sustainable. So, and in that sense, the marriage never happened. They even mention here. It's just, in some cases, there was no real marriage. You can be married in a paper, you can be married in a church, but in the true sense of the word, is necessary to be based in love and in sympathy. Otherwise, it's not a real marriage, right? That's good. So it was a very short chapter. We can continue on the next chapter next week. But anybody else has questions or comments about those things, and even all previous things we have read that somehow you can relate to this or compare? You're going to say something, David?
Oh, there we are. It's sort of like the last chapter was about false prophets, and or like you were talking about that relationship where the guy was burning, or the people who try and trick you into being that they say one thing and they're another thing. And this chapter, this one is in, like Elizabeth is trying to figure out, how do you find out who's really real in front of you, like, or
in terms of marriage, you're saying?
Marriage, or just whether they're a good spirit or a bad spirit. Mm-hmm. And this is sort of saying, it's kind of letting, we can get together, but sometimes it just doesn't quite work. And you really have to trust what's inside, even if you, like, I know there's marriages that are what do they call them? You know, they're put together and they just don't work. But this is almost like saying, it's trying to make a balance. And I can see that, I don't know what I'm saying, but it's, I don't know how to say this, but I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, I can see a relationship, because some people like to each other.
Yes,
right?
but
or in a relationship, sometimes you can be fooled. Oh, that person really loves me, or that person has good intentions, when comes to the relationship, and sometimes they don't. They have second agendas, and that's true. So, but of course, we can never know 100% what the other person is thinking or planning, or even sometimes the people change. Sometimes relationships don't work out after a while because people change.
Right.
It's not because they necessarily were being dishonest or insincere. It's because they kind of grow and the other person didn't grow, or vice versa, and or they grew in different directions, and according with their own spiritual path, and then the relationship becomes inviolable. But when it comes to not being honest, like you compared with the previous chapter, like the false prophets and this and that, the bad spirits, like what is bad spirits when it comes to like people that is not incarnated is a continuation of what people have been here, right? People don't change just because they passed away, they went to the spiritual world. They are what they have been here or before. It's like they are in the same stage of development. So that's why it's important to use our time here to grow as much as we can, to learn and to apply and to develop ourselves, to overcome our shortcomings, overcome our weaknesses, because we all have, otherwise we would not be here in this planet, full of pain, full of suffering, right? We would be in a much better place. So we all are in a stage of developing ourselves still, very very imperfect beings. So if we use this time here to grow, we are going to save ourselves a lot of pain. So and then when we go to the other side, we're gonna have even more wisdom to share and to help the others here. But in terms of the bad spirits and the bad people, or is all about where they are in terms of their spiritual development. Sometimes people grew up this way. For example, like people grew up in a family or in a community where everybody that lied, everybody betrayed each other. That's what they know, and they're going to repeat. It doesn't mean they're not responsible for their actions and their choices. Of course, we all are. But if sometimes people, when they are exposed to other possibilities, like some kind of education, they end up in another group of people, a group of friends, or a community of some sort, of some kind of guide or counselor that show them there's other ways of being. They can grow, so they can change. And it's the same thing for people here incarnated and from people from the other side. But when it comes to relationships, in terms of, like you said, David, marriage and like intimate relationships, is like there's even other layers that sometimes creates problem, which comes from people's inner conflict. So the more we know ourselves, the more we look for self-knowledge and solving our inner problems, because we all have, the less problems we're going to have in relationships, and the more open we are going to be, the more, I would say, successful we are going to be in our interpersonal relationships, both with friends and family, and especially in romantic relationship, because in a more intimate relationship, there's much more that we share. We have more expectations. The other has more expectation towards us as well. We have more feelings involved. So when we don't have our own inner conflicts resolved, we cannot really trust our instincts because it's all messed up. And we are going to project on the other person problems that is ours sometimes. And that creates a whole complicated situation where we don't really see the other person. What we are seeing is our own shadow. So it is this process, but it is a very unique opportunity for us to grow. That's why they don't encourage people to split when there is a true union, when there's love and respect, mutual respect, but still there's difficulties. They don't encourage people to split because it's a very good opportunity for us to grow. In a romantic relationship, we have to face our shadows. Otherwise, we don't go anywhere, and the relationship is not sustainable, and it's not going to work. So if you use that opportunity to develop ourselves, to grow, and to solve our own inner problems, to be in a relationship, that's a wonderful thing. And that's why monogamous relationship is important. It's not about moral puritanism. No, it's a very wonderful opportunity for both people to grow morally and spiritually and emotionally. So, but that's another story. So, but so it's not like the churches have imposed and divorce is a prohibited thing or is a sin or just for the sake of it. No, there was a lot of distortion, right, made from religions, many religions, including Christianity, on that regard. But the true meaning of not encouraging people to get divorced when there is true love and there is true sympathy between those two people, and is because of that opportunity to grow. We see that, for example, there are shows, reality shows. I don't know if you guys watch any those reality shows. There's several that kind of explore this kind of philosophy or this reality in different ways. For example, Love at First Sight. There's also I forgot the name of the other ones. There's a lot of shows exploring this whole concept of what makes a marriage sustainable, what makes a marriage to work. And there are some statistics that shows that prearranged marriage lasts longer than the other ones, the ones that people choose, because of that concept, that commitment. People put themselves when they get married, they cannot get divorced because of the cultural thing and this whole thing. So people work much harder on themselves and with each other to make that happen. And it's very interesting, this concept, because to some extent is true. In some cases is can be a disaster, can be even dangerous, right? But we see nowadays like a lot of people getting married with the idea of getting divorced. Already having this in mind, like, okay, if it doesn't work, we get divorced. That's fine. Let's switch. It's just like buy another clothes. So this kind of attitude is not conducive to this kind of commitment of growing and really getting together to solve the problems that is going to lead both of them to grow. And it's not about staying in a situation where one or the other is in danger, or one or the other is absolutely like leading to misery and depression because it's not totally off, but is that kind of a commitment. It's the same thing with career. If someone has a commitment with their career to the sense to the point of really investing a lot of energy and effort, they are going to grow and they're going to prosper. But if they work it, if they have a relationship with their work or career as something that's like, oh, I just hate my job, I don't care, it's just a breadwinner, this is not important in my life, what's going to happen? The quality of their job is not going to be good. They are not going to grow professionally. It's the same thing with the relationship. And again, I'm not condemning or judging anyone. I have been divorced. So I know that sometimes there's no other way out, but the attitude needs to be such that in everything we do, right? Not only in relationships, but in everything we do, we need to have the attitude of when we commit with something, we need to do well. We need to put 100%. Otherwise, it's not going to be good. It's not going to have a good quality, a good outcome, right? And that commitment involves self-knowledge, involves self-reflection, working on our own selves and working on communication, working on understanding the other person, stepping outside of our comfort zone. It is a lot of things that can lead to wonderful growth. Two people are committed the same way.
If they're committed the same way. If one works on themselves and the other doesn't, then it's
true. Yeah. Exactly. All right, so let's do our final prayer, and we are going to start on our next group soon. Dear God, spirits of the light, spiritual guides, thank you very much for this opportunity, for all the teachings and lessons that comes from you to help us to lead a fulfilling and happy life. To lead us to growth and spiritual development. Please continue with us throughout the week, helping us to put this into practice and going to, in order for us to go and become examples to the world. Thank you very much for your unconditional love. And now we envision that we invite our healing guides to come closer and to surround us with the healing light. We invite our angels, to be with us and to help us in this healing moment. And as we receive the healing light from our guides and angels, we share them with each other. We share them with our homes, our families, our pets, our neighbors, growing farther and farther all the way to take our whole planet Earth. And as we envision our planet Earth being surrounded by love, we see that this healing is helping those who are sick everywhere in the world, helping those who don't have a shelter, who don't have food to eat or water to drink. We envision this healing light, healing those who are incarcerated, those who are being victims of war, violence, persecution, racism, and discrimination. We envision this healing light, healing and touching the hearts of our governants everywhere in the world, so they can work for the common good. We envision this healing light, healing our Mother Earth, nature, and all the creatures, healing all the damages we have caused as humanity, and helping us to grow and to amplify our wisdom in order to reverse this damage and also to stop imposing those damages that all of us in every level, the ones who have economic power, political power, the scientists, and all of us, all the regular citizens, we all can grow our consciousness and our moral levels to this extent that we can live in peace and harmony with the nature, and also in peace and harmony with each other. And now we invite our loved ones to step closer to also receive this healing, because they are also in their process of development. We feel our guides and our angels very close to us. We ask them to give us wisdom and protection in everything we do, and also through our mediumship. And with our hearts full of love and gratitude, we start to come back. We feel our breathing, our body, the environment around us, and when we are ready, we can open our eyes. All right, for those who are here only for the literature group, we are welcome to join us back next week. You're welcome to stay with us for the next group, the mediumship circle. And for those who are watching us from home, from our recording, you're welcome to join us every Monday at 5 p.m. Pacific time. You can contact me through our page, Revenant, on Facebook, and Revenant.world in my website, to get the link and to get more information. So, and I hope you join our family every week here at 5 p.m. Pacific time. Thank you very much and have a wonderful day. Bye.